in the old country in the southeastern United States of America was a confederacy of nations and tribes and people. And within that confederacy included people that you would consider to be black or Creeks of African descent. In the 1830s, when we were removed from our traditional homeland here to Oklahoma Territory, or Indian Territory, which we now know as Oklahoma, on that Trail of Tears, so to speak, that also included Creeks of African descent, some enslaved, many free, and also what we would consider to be free blacks or free Africans. They came to the Creek Nation or Indian Territory. They were here, they were productive citizens up until the Civil War. When the Civil War split the nation, you had some Creeks who sided with the Confederacy, called the Southern Creeks. You had other Creeks who were what we call loyal Creeks, which included many of the Creeks of African descent. At the end of the Civil War and the treaties were being negotiated, there were 5 individuals who participated in those negotiations and signed that treaty of 1866. One of those individuals was a Creek of African descent, or African Creek, by the name of Cal Tom, who was my 4-time great-grandfather. He signed that treaty, and in that treaty, you have a copy of it. All our media members and anyone else that wants a copy, we'll give it to you. Article 2 of that treaty simply says, or clearly says, that Creeks of African descent shall have and enjoy all the rights and privileges of native citizens, including an equal interest in the soil and national funds, and the laws of said nation shall be equally binding upon them and give equal protection of all such persons and all others whatsoever of race or color. That is where we are today. Because from 1866 into the Dawes Commission arose, which first started with the Dawes Act, which was passed in 1893, and then when they 1887, when they created the Dawes Commission in 1893, and then in 1898, the Curtis Act, where they forcibly enrolled Creek citizens. It was the United States government that segregated so-called Creek freedmen. It was the United States government that used the hypo-descent rule that said 1 drop of black blood makes you black. It was the United States government that created a separate role of so-called Creeks by blood and so-called Creek freedmen. That was not something that the Creeks did themselves. However, in 1979, the Creek Nation, relying upon this openly racist Dawes rules, decided to segregate, strip, and steal the heritage, culture, and citizenship of those so-called Creek freedmen and their descendants. And their descendants are here today. I would like for the Black Creek or so-called Creek freedmen descendants to please stand. Please just stand and be recognized. Please stand. These individuals and so many more across this nation grew up speaking Creek, living Creek ways. They understood what it meant to be Creek. And just like my grandmother, Johnny Mae Alston, just had it ripped from them, illegally, ripped from them, and told that they were not who they are. They are Creek people, period, point blank. The treaty says so, but more importantly, our history says so. Our culture says so. Our birthright says so. So in this lawsuit, we will utilize the Treaty of 1866, the clear language, to get the citizenship that has been denied for almost 40 years, illegally denied for almost 40 years. We will utilize and be inspired by what the Seminole Nation freedmen have been able to do, and the Cherokee freedmen last year in August 30 of 2017, when they won their successful fight in the Cherokee Nation. We believe strongly that we will win our fight here in the Creek Nation. This is a historic day. I'm proud and blessed to stand here with my clients, my family, my people, to stand up the same way so many Creek so-called freedmen stood up. People like Warrior Renty and Judge Reed and Silas Jefferson and Cal Tom and Jake Simmons Jr. And the list goes on and on and on. So we have other individuals here I want to have you opportunity to hear from. The first individual will be Jeff Kennedy. We'll tell you a little bit about the organization, the overview, and what they do and the work they've been doing so importantly over the last few years. Jeff.
I don't normally do this, so just kind of bear with me. First, I'd like to thank the law firms of DeMauro, Solomon Simmons, Riggs Abney, Grand Zorn, and is that Beveridge and Diamond for the awesome work that they've done. We were really excited that they sought us out because they recognized the great contributions we have been making to the community, and they felt like we are the best to represent this lawsuit. The MCIFB, of course, is comprised of members that could trace their ancestry back to the Dawes Roll. Of course, my name is Jeff Kennedy. I'm the great-grandson of Ben Grayson, Dawes Roll number 5329. And of course, Ms. Rhonda Grayson is also a co-member, co-founder and a board member. And your ancestor is?
America Cohee, married name Webster, Creek Road number 4661.
Ms. Sharon?
I'm Sharon Lindsay Scott. My ancestor is Jackson Perriman. Roll number is 3665.
And so, as you can see, we can all go back to the Dawes Roll. At one point, they said that we did not have a Dawes Roll, but clearly, you see that's incorrect. So what I'm basically about to tell you is a little bit of an overview. Our mission statement is, I'll read that, to preserve and protect the unique history and heritage and genealogy of the Muscogee Creek Indian Freedmen who were removed to Indian Territory, which is Oklahoma, on the Trail of Tears. Next, to promote interest and participation by sharing genealogical information with members, researchers, and the general public. Next, to provide and help and educate resource to researchers and through lectures, workshops, conferences, and museum exhibits. And lastly, to educate the members and the public of the African Creeks' political rights and citizens of the Creek Nation defined by the Creek Treaty of 1866, Article 2. Ladies and gentlemen, we had just celebrated our sesquicentennial. That's sesquicentennial, which is the 150th anniversary of the signing of the Treaty of 1866. This marks our 152nd anniversary. Of course, it was ratified July 19, so we're excited. We are a 501(c) organization. We're over 850 members strong. And what else did we actually want to say?
That's good enough, buddy.
He said that was good enough. But anyway, we just want to thank our members for showing up. Oh.
Go ahead.
We're done.
No, go ahead.
Sometimes you get a little excited, and I do get a little bit emotional because we're really passionate about what we do. We're really passionate about, like I said, what we do. And we just want everybody to know that basically we're trying to go home. We're just trying to come home. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be David Riggs. But before we bring him, I want to be very clear when we say so-called Creek Freedmen. We're not trying to run away from anything, but you have to understand that African Creeks or Black Creeks, they didn't use that terminology. It's not what they called themselves. They called themselves African Creeks or Black Creeks, or as my great-grandfather will call himself, as my grandmother can attest, a native black. They didn't use the term freedmen. This is a term that was forced upon them by the United States government, and it lumped everyone regardless. This is not about blood, but it lumped everybody into one category regardless of who their real genealogy is, and that's not right. And that's what we're going to continue to fight against as we continue to fight to get citizenship. We want to make sure we can correct the history of who these people are. So David Riggs from our firm, one of our firm founders. Mr. Riggs.
Thank you, Mario. Well, this is obviously a very, very important case, especially for the people directly involved, but not just for those folks, but it's a case of great historical significance in particular for Tulsans. People of the city of Tulsa should understand the great significance historically this case has, because not just of our geographic location, because the early day history of the city of Tulsa is linked so closely with that of the Creek people, the Creek tribe, and now the Creek Nation. Because of that link, the city of Tulsa should understand the significance it has for the city and for its citizens here. Our firm will give this case the highest priority we can give it. It will have the full support of our firm as we go forward, and the firm takes great pride in getting asked to be involved in a case of this kind because of the values that it entails and because of the kind of people we're going to be representing. We appreciate being asked to be involved.
Thank you, David. I have my another one of my law partners, Chris Kepsel. He's going to talk about the specific remedies besides citizenship that we're looking for in this lawsuit. Chris.
Thank you, DeMario. I also want to recognize one other person from our firm here, one of our colleagues, Jim Orbison, one of our partners and president of our firm right now. So, there's probably a few questions why this is filed in the District of Columbia. That's the place where we have to seek our remedies. And we laid out very specifically what we're seeking in our complaint on page 22, and you can see a copy of that for the full details, and I'm going to give you a brief overview here today. Basically, the relief we're asking for is two parts. It's declaratory relief and injunctive relief. We're asking in the declaratory relief for certain rights to be determined and declared by the court for our clients. And that will have effect not just for those clients, but for other people who are Creek Freedmen descendants. We're concerned that if we don't have the specific remedies and relief asked for in that complaint, that the citizenship may be granted, but they may be treated as second-class citizens in the Creek Nation, and that's not acceptable. We're seeking specifically to make sure that they're granted full citizenship, the right to vote, the right to hold office, the right to run for office, the right for all benefits that are granted to all equally situated Creek citizens. We can't accept anything less. That's what we're asking them for. We also have federal defendants in this case. The reason we have federal defendants is because we have to make sure that on both sides of the aisle here, both at the tribal level and at the federal government level, that rights are protected. And we're asking that the federal defendants be enjoined, be restricted from taking any action or providing any benefits to the tribe until this citizenship is granted in full to our clients. In addition, we're asking that the court appoint through the BIA a trustee to make sure that these rights are protected. And that's a kind of a broad overview, but most importantly, what we're asking for is the equal rights for our clients and for the citizens, the Creek Freedmen descendants, to be treated as full and complete citizens of the Creek Nation. We thank you for your time.
I also want to recognize again our co-counsel from Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, couldn't get here, but I just want you to know they are also excited to be a part of this case. They also have committed a tremendous amount of resources behind this effort. We have 4 lawyers from their office working on this case, Graham Zorn, Nessa Hartwich, Matt Snyder, and John Gutman. And they and our firm are committed to doing whatever it takes for however long it takes legally to make this, this issue be righted. Because this is not only a treaty issue, but this is also impacting the 13th Amendment. And regardless of who you are, in the United States of America, you cannot discriminate against individuals based upon race, period. And that is what's happening, and that is illegal in this country. I also want to recognize we have some elected officials who have wanted to publicly stand with our clients and on this issue. We have State Representative Regina Goodwin, and we have City Councilor Vanessa Hall Harper. I've also heard from State Representative Monroe Nichols, who has said, hey, please let the people know I couldn't be here, but I stand in solidarity and will do anything I can in my power to get this issue righted. Also had the same type of conversation and email from State Senator Kevin Matthews. And so at this time, if one of you, Regina, would you like to say something, please?
Thank you, Attorney Solomon. Again, it is, as we know, we've been here for a long time, and certainly we were just overjoyed in terms of the 15-year battle that the Cherokee freedmen had to endure, and then they were ultimately victorious because they hung in there and they did what they had to do. No matter how many folks told them no, no matter how many folks told them to turn around and sit down, they kept moving forward. We're going to encourage you to do the same. We want to say we would support the right of our African Creeks to, in their effort to fight for the rights that were established in the 1866 treaties with the United States government and the tribal nations of Indian Territory. So you look at 2018, 1866. We got to move forward. We got to stop the discrimination. The time is now. It's up to us. We can do this. Let's do the right thing. Thank you.
So in conclusion, again, I think our goal is very clear. We believe that the law is very clear, that the Treaty of 1866 is enforced. It has not been abrogated. In fact, it's the Treaty of 1866 that the Creek Nation utilizes as its jurisdiction to be a nation. And I want to make sure we understand that the Creek Nation is not a collection of a race of people. It is a political sovereign nation. And it's a political sovereign entity. It does not have a right to discriminate based upon race. And it does not have a right to not follow federal law. Federal law says these people, Creek of African descent, are 100% Creek citizens. And we intend to prove that in the district court, and if we have to appeal it, whatever we have to do, we will do that. And in concluding, my grandmother, Grandma, please stand. That's my 86-year-old grandmother, Johnny Mae Austin. Her father, my great-grandfather, John W. Simmons, was a Rural Creek miner, Creek number 602. My grandmother tells me how she grew up speaking Creek, going to Creek events. She was a Creek. Our family has been Creek for as long as we've been around. We're doing this for people like her. Thank you. We want you guys. You can get your. We want to take a picture. They can all come up here. So we can get pictures.